All right, what up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have David Fivecoat, who is an executive coach. David, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Really excited to be on your show tonight. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you, and we like to jump right in. So if you could start with telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you like to do for fun, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I grew up in Ohio and I attended West Point, the United States Military Academy, and was commissioned as an infantry officer and served 24 years in the infantry and eventually retiring as a colonel. Along the way, I did 3 trips to Iraq, a trip to Afghanistan, a couple of side trips to Kosovo, Bosnia, and Korea. So I stayed pretty busy during the 24 years. But then in 2017, I retired and transitioned into my current, we call it gig, occupation, whatever, however we wanted to define it, as both a executive coach, a leadership consultant, and a business consultant. And have had the opportunity to work with some phenomenal companies over the last 5 years and really help them grow and get better and improve their leadership and work with executives as a coach and watch them grow and develop their leadership skills. And that really has been an incredibly meaningful and really enjoyable for me. You asked like what I do for fun. I am an avid cyclist. So like I told you before we got started, I'm in Philadelphia right now, so I don't have a bike here, although I rented one of those, they have Indigo bikes, and I pedaled around town on that yesterday and watched the Tour de France this morning, and trying to keep up with my cycling habit, even though I'm removed from the bike right now.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay. Well, tell us a bit more about your motivation. What gets you up and keeps you going every day?
Yeah, so so at least so one thing that I've carried on since the Army is, the Army's tagline for a while was, we do more before 9 a.m. than most people do all day. And after 24 years of following that, I still try to get up early in the morning and tackle a big project or two. And for me, that's the most efficient and effective time of the day. And if I get that one or two big projects done, then I feel it's okay, and I'll saddle my bike up and go out for a ride and make sure I get that physical fitness in, which to me is an important part of my day, an important part of keeping me motivated. And I like the challenge of getting out there and testing myself on the bike and seeing if I can ride more, ride faster, or do something different that I didn't do before. And so I still get up, 5 o'clock in the morning and try to get out there and get after it and make something happen in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. 5 a.m. every day, or do you take weekends off?
Sometimes Sunday I'll let myself sleep in till 6 or 6:30.
I thought you were about to say like 5:05 or something.
Well, I have a dog that I got during COVID. Her name is Samantha, and unfortunately, when you get into a routine, especially with animals, they like to keep that routine going. And she doesn't let me sleep in too late before we got to get out there and get the walk in and make sure she gets a chance to get out and explore the world.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Well, awesome. We're going to jump into your dreams and goals now. What is your vision for your life and your coaching gig, business, occupation thing you got going?
Yeah. So for me, I'm 51 years old, just turned 51 this year. I'm excited about continuing to grow my company and try to impact as many people as I possibly can through the executive coaching side, and then also I do leadership talks. I think you saw the book that I wrote, which is called Grow Your Grit. It's been out actually next week. It'll be out for a year. 29 5-star reviews on Amazon. I promise they aren't all my mother. And so that book has had an impact on others, and I've helped people develop their process on how to develop their grit and accomplish their long-term goals, which is especially important when any of us set out with sort of a amorphous goal, like creating a company. And I know you're trying to grow your company and help other entrepreneurs. And that doesn't come with a roadmap. And there's going to be lots of obstacles. And how do you persevere through that and develop that grit that enables you to be successful? And for me, and what I think, and what seems to have helped a lot of people that I've worked with, is this idea of figuring out what your personal purpose is, doing good goal setting, making sure that you're putting time on the calendar to actually do it, breaking that big goal up into smaller goals, and then dealing with some of the fears that are maybe holding you back. For example, I started my own company in May of or March of 2020, and that's a daunting proposition. You don't know if you're going to be able to get a client, and I went a whole quarter without having a client come in through the front door. And I have huge respect for small business owners and entrepreneurs out there, because it is a huge risk, and that is a scary proposition, as you're looking at no paycheck for 3 whole months. And so I get it. So one of the things that I talk to folks about is, okay, you list your fears and you list whatever the worst thing is that can possibly happen. And for me, when I stood the company up, I'm like, hey, it won't be successful. I won't make enough money to keep the lights on. And so how do I deal with that? And for me, the way I dealt with it was I said, okay, I will bound this idea of running this company for a year, and I'll be all in for a year, and I'll take an assessment in March of 2021 and say, okay, is the company doing well? Is it thriving? Does it look like I can continue to grow it? And if so, I'll keep going. If it wasn't successful for what I deemed successful, I'll close down the website and shutter it and put my resume out there and go try to find something that might pay the bills. But taking that risk and taking that step and get myself to actually do that was huge for growth and development for me. I learned how to put together a website, and I've gone on a bunch of podcasts, and I blog every week, and all these things that I wouldn't have done that were, that I now feel like are pretty cool accomplishments, happened all because I was willing to take that risk and dealt with that fear of failure, and said, okay, I'll be all in for a year, and if it doesn't work, go try to do something else.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love how obviously you've seen some success. You're on this podcast, you're talking about your company right now. So it's safe to say you've seen some success, and I think it's really cool. Plus you have a book with 29 reviews.
Right.
That's much successful than many aspiring authors and current authors. I love how you gave it a year. And something I've noticed is Alex Hormozy says this a lot. So I guess I didn't really notice it. He pointed it out to me.
Mm-hmm.
He said that you can kind of tell who you're talking to or how successful they're going to be based on the time horizon they speak on, right? And so it's like a lot of people are like, well, how am I going to make money this week? And if they go with how are they going to make money this week, they can't build anything cool or worthwhile because it's all about scraping cash up this week. If you go, how am I going to make money this month? It's still hard to get outside of an employee mentality. And so your options are really limited. When you go to how am I going to make money in the next 6 months? Okay, now you have some business opportunities opening up. How am I going to make money in the next year? Just about any business, if you work effectively enough and you're focused and you're consistent and you're persistent, and you set good goals and have a good purpose, you can see some income in a year from just about any business, I would say. But I think that's really cool because he says he talks to people like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett makes like 10-year decisions, and it's like he's on another level, And so I just think that's really cool how you extended your time horizon and you saw success, and you're living here and able to talk about it right now because you extended that time horizon, gave yourself time and a ramp, which is really cool.
And you don't realize, like, for instance, blogging. I have blog posts that I published in July of 2020 that still drive 4 to 5 viewers to the website every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that, Jim Collins called it the Flywheel Concept. And you don't realize when you start out on that journey, like, when you started out on your real estate journey, you don't realize that work that you put in at some point in time is going to keep driving that flywheel forward and keeps bringing, whether it's customers in the front door or eyeballs on your website or, potential folks that are going to buy a house you just don't know where that comes from and which ones will resonate, but you got to put that work in. And I love that idea of the longer horizon, because even with corporate groups I work with, they've got 13-week P&Ls and quarterly numbers and all these short range sort of things that they're focused in on, but getting them to pull back and thinking about a longer horizon has really been beneficial for a lot of folks that I've had the opportunity to work with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. And to the real estate point, I jumped into the real estate space as like an investor, wholesaler, never gave myself enough of a time horizon because I didn't have the consistent money flow to keep the systems up that I'd put in place. So it was like, if this doesn't work in a month, I have to give it up.
Yeah.
Because that was all the money I had, which you shouldn't do things that way, guys. But jumped in as a realtor, and it was funny. I stayed consistent at it for about 2 to 3 months and realized I can make a lot of money doing this, but I'll have golden handcuffs because I'll hate what I'm doing. And I had people reaching out to me from the prospecting I did 2 to 3 months ago about wanting to like do business with me. Are you still in the business of doing that? And it's like, if I had simply extended my time horizon and aligned with my purpose and set good goals by knowing myself, I would have been able to see the fruit of that work. But because I didn't extend my time horizon, I abandoned it. I wasn't able to see the fruit, which is why I'm really optimistic about the podcast. Cause I'm like, I do this for the rest of my life. So I think that's really, but awesome. So we have grow your company, do more speaking engagements. Your book is out, Grow Your Grit, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It'll be out. So the average book in the US sells 400 copies. And last month I went over 1,100 copies sold. So I'm at least above average as an author.
Yeah.
When you ask out what one of my dreams is, trying to figure out what I'm doing right now. A lifelong goal was to write a book. I did the first one. I learned a lot of hard lessons out of it. I did it about as lean as you possibly could, self-publishing, and on about as tight a timeline as anybody that I talk to that's interested in writing a book. I'm like, hey, look, first, don't do it like I did it, because I set this way aggressive timeline that like zero wiggle room, and I was writing every day and having to do something every day on it, and it just doesn't give you enough time to really put out a great book. And so trying to figure out what book number 2 is. Part of me wants to write a fiction book, but I can't figure out the financial side of writing the fiction book, because the Grow Your Grit book was, of course, designed to help people, and it complements my executive coaching. I use some of the aspects out of it to help the executive coaching clients. The fiction book, I'm something I want to do, but I'm not sure I can even get 400 people to buy it. So who knows?
You know what you could do? Have you ever read The Go-Giver by Bob Berg?
I have not.
Good book series. The Go-Giver series. It's a good book series, but what they are, they're business parables. And if you want to write, like, say you want to write a fantasy book, you could write a fantasy novel that has your Grow Your Grit principles kind of throughout, by like, say you have the protagonist and you have the old sage who's kind of leading him throughout the book.
Okay. All right. It's sort of like the 5 dysfunctions of the team, and how he uses a fictitious story as a way to teach the dysfunctions of the team.
Exactly. So then you get really creative on the fictional side, but it could still kind of apply to your leadership business. And a lot of these executives could lower their shoulders, get a little less stressed, and read something that's they probably don't read every day.
Right. No, that's a good point. You're the second person that's actually told me that. So maybe I should start listening. You're in good company.
There we go. Well, awesome. So we got Grow Your Company, speaking engagements, figure out book number 2, which we've kind of figured out one step of it.
Right.
And what are some other dreams or goals that you want to chat about?
Yeah, so I want to keep I want to keep riding my bike and stay as healthy as possible. And for me, uh, you know, physical fitness was always important for me in the military. I always liked the Army because the first things that we would do every day is do PT from 6 to 7:30 in the morning. I was like, hey, I'm a professional athlete. I'm getting paid
Yeah.
to go work out. And so I still try to continue that as a daily habit, and try to keep myself in the best shape possible and take care of myself. Um, you have to, and that's one of the challenges that I see with executives that I work with is they're so busy that they don't have enough time to look out for themselves and take care of their own health and fitness. And so I talk to all of them about sort of reframing the problem. Um, it, and I don't know if you're into physical fitness, but a lot of folks out there are like, oh, I can, I've got to go to the gym. It's a 15-minute drive to the gym. I got to work out for an hour, and I drive home, and they consider that the workout. But because it's an hour and a half time, a lot of days they don't get it done.
Hmm.
They may get to the gym twice a week because they're so busy on the road and on phone calls and stuff like that that they don't get there. And so I asked the executives to reframe the problem and say, hey, look, set up your ideal workout as 15 minutes and say to yourself, hey, whatever it is that I enjoy doing, because we're as older guys and women, we're not going to the Olympics anytime soon. So pick something you like, and if it's pickleball or racquetball or walking or whatever, or going to the gym, do that and say, hey, look, if I get in 15 minutes today, that's a good day. And most days you'll get in more, but on those days where you are busy and you can only get 15 minutes, it's better than sitting on the couch or sitting in your chair or sitting in the car or playing. And so figure out what that is. And like today, I did push-ups and sit-ups and went for a 2-mile walk, and that was my workout, and I'm okay with that. But if I could get more in, I would love to, but it was a busy day and I had a lot of work to catch up on, and to talk to you tonight and all that. So I reframed it. You asked what the other goal is, and one of my long-term goals is I live in Columbus, Georgia, which is by no means the mountains, but I really want to live in the mountains at some point in time, whether that's North Georgia or Montana or someplace. And so I would love to have a house in the mountains to do that. And luckily, I just found a real estate agent that can help me out with finding that house.
There we go. So what? We're talking 6, 9 months till you're there.
No, no, no. I met you, so
I got you.
uh, yeah. Some of it is, I have a 12-year-old daughter that's in Columbus, Georgia. She has to get. I've told her, we'll get her out of high school and in college, and then maybe I'll start looking at that point in time. But it doesn't hurt to keep poking around and looking in different places right now and dreaming a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So it'd be in the mountains where? Like, are there any mountains close to Columbus?
So North Georgia is actually the tail end of the Appalachians,
Okay.
and there's some pretty good mountains up there. It's 10 degrees cooler than where I live, and they get snow in the winter and all that. A little bit farther north in North Carolina, you get the largest mountain on the East Coast, which is Mount Mitchell, and then I just love Montana, especially the area around Bozeman, Montana. So if I could get out there, that would be great. But uh, a lot of folks from Silicon Valley went to Bozeman during the pandemic, and have really inflated the real estate prices. So the business has got to do really well for the next couple of years to get me to Bozeman.
There we go. There we go. I got you. I got you. Well, awesome. If there were one or two people that you can meet right now, and this could be a specific person or a type of person, and they'd really help you take the next step towards your dreams and goals, who would they be and how would they help you?
Um, so two different guys that I would like to meet that I've never met before. Um, so both Stephen King and Stephen Pressfield are both authors, both fiction authors, but they both wrote these great books about how to write a good fiction book. And I would love the opportunity to sit down with either one of those guys for the afternoon and just talk to them about what process that they use, how they create these great stories, and how they draw the reader in. To me, at least, would be a great way to help me get on the road to doing that second book.
All right. It sounds like
Yeah.
you really have wanted to write fiction for a while.
Right. Right. It has, but it's one of those things that it's a big step, and so I just got to I went to it, and I'll do it. I've gotten to the point where I even have a big piece of paper laid out on my kitchen table that I was going to sketch out the different chapters on and stuff like that. So we're close, but it's one of those things, like, you hold yourself up on these big projects. And part of it is that, at least with me, I find myself procrastinating when I have big projects. If I don't take the time to actually break the big project down into a set of small projects. And so, I just need to say, okay, 2 hours, I need to do this. 1 hour, I need to do this. 1 hour, I need to do this. 1 hour, I need to do this, and create a little checklist. I love checklists. I've got my checklist sitting right here for today of all the different things that I did. And I like, checking the boxes, and, I just have to get to that point where I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to write on. And I have to be happy. Like, the Grow Your Grit book was a suggestion from a client I was doing consulting with. I'd always wanted to write a nonfiction book. It wasn't like, but the client said, hey, look, we're about ready to hire this guy to teach our group grit. Would you look at his book? And I looked at it, and I was like, it's a good book, but it doesn't really have a great process for how to develop grit. And she said, well, you're kind of gritty. You've done all these things in the Army, and you stood up your small business and all this. Why don't you write a book about developing your grit? And it's like, okay, so that's a good idea. So that was the inspiration, and it carried me along for 9 months to get the book out. But that, I now know what the commitment is to get there, which is, it was really trying to pencil in about an hour a day of doing something to move the book forward. And that takes time. And I'm not sure I've settled on the story yet. So we'll get there.
I got you. I'm gonna push you here a little bit.
All right. It's okay. It's all right. I need it sometimes.
Okay.
I need that extra oomph.
Let's have a little brainstorming sesh for your fiction book. I know you have some ideas rolling around, because I'm the same way. I have some fiction books that I want to write, and I think it's fun. It's just a fun creative outlet for me, and I've always had ideas, so I feel like you have ideas too. Give me one of the ideas, and let's walk through what the first chapter would look like.
Okay, so I'm already ahead of you there. So I don't know if did you ever read Tom Clancy's book Red Storm Rising?
I did not.
Okay, it's a fiction book on a fictitious World War III. It was written during the Cold War, before the wall came down between the U.S. and then the Soviet Union. Fast forward, and it's not Mel Brooks, it's Mel Brooks's son wrote World War Z, which took the same style of global war against zombies and turned it into a zombie book in the same style that Tom Clancy had used for this book called Red Storm Rising. And there was another one out even before that called World War III, which those are the books I read as a kid. And so I loved them. And so I wanted to write a fiction book on taking a year in Afghanistan, and I led a battalion. A battalion is about 700 guys and women in combat Southeast Afghanistan, and take some of the ideas and stories from that deployment and write it like in that same sort of World War Z, Red Storm Rising kind of style. So you have a chapter that will go to like Washington, D.C., and a chapter that goes to Kabul, and a chapter that goes into the Taliban and a chapter that goes into the company that's in combat. And so I just can't figure out how it all fits together. And you basically need 50 chapters at 10 pages a pop to get your story out there. And you got to have the beginning, the middle, and the end. I've got that idea rolling around in my head. I just got to get to the point where I will take a bunch of stickies and sort of do different, write out 50 ideas for chapters and sort of move them around and see if I can get that story arc where who's the protagonist, who's the because there's lots of characters in this thing, but you've got to sort of narrow it down to about 10 or 15 and say, okay, what's happening here, what's happening there, and how do you move the story along.
So have you already done this process? Like, you've taken the stickies and you've placed them?
No, that's why I got the big piece of white paper out. It's been rolling around in my head, and I've listed some ideas for chapters in notebooks, and but it hasn't gotten any more deep than, hey, this was an interesting thing that happened during the deployment. Maybe I could turn this into a chapter, and this is an interesting thing. Maybe I could turn this into a chapter.
How much time would you say it takes you to get that done, if you were to like focus on it and be consistent with it?
Probably a week. An hour or two. Well, to get a rough, sort of idea out there, gotta, for me, I'm an iterative kind of guy, so you got to get it out there, and then I got to let it sit for a couple of days or week. So I don't know about you, we all have those moments of inspiration in the shower, right? Because you're totally focused in the present, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I need to move this chapter around and get it into this idea. So anyway, that's how I work. I know it's not how everybody works, but that's how it's worked for me.
Cool. So next Thursday,
Uh-huh.
are you going to send me a picture of the 50 sticky notes?
Give me till next, not this Monday, but next Monday. I'll send you a picture of whatever I got at that point in time. I know I've got a week solid at the house. Like I told you before, I'm on the road in Philadelphia. I'm flying to Ohio tomorrow to see my folks, and but I know I've got a solid week at the house next week to maybe move some stickies around.
All righty, Monday, July 19th.
All right, I'm right down.
Sounds good. Here, write down my number too, so you can text it to me.
I got your email already, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. That's great then.
I can send it that way. Perfect. Okay. That way you don't have to give out your phone number, and so all your fans won't start texting you.
I've given it out plenty of times. I'll probably have to change it once this podcast pops off. But it is what it is. Well, awesome, man. We're gonna jump into our thriving three now, and the first question is: favorite book, movie, or podcast? Pick one.
Favorite movie? Well, it's one of my favorite movies. So one of my favorite movies that's come out recently is John Wick 1. I like it. I like to joke that it's a love story because John Wick loves violence. But and frankly, I was disappointed in John Wick 2 and 3 because John Wick 1 is such a powerful story about we all get, he was attached to his wife who died of a disease, and he loves her. She gives him the dog as a way to remember her. He's attached to the dog, and the Russian mob kills the dog. And so who hasn't a dog that if the Russian mob killed the dog, that they would want to, retaliate and take out the whole Russian mob for killing their dog. And the action is really well. And actually, Keanu Reeves, because of that, actually was a gun shooter. He competes in competitions, engage target with a pistol, a rifle, and a shotgun. And so it's pretty cool. You can find that stuff, but technically, it's really good.
I got
like that movie.
I gotcha. Awesome.
All right. John Wick 1.
There we go. There we go. And what is one way you like to take care of yourself?
So I'm a, you know, so one of the things I try to do is make sure I get enough sleep. One of the things that I did not do very in me as a high-ranking officer was I lived on about 6 hours of sleep. And in retrospect, I realized that I was not as effective as I possibly could be. And there were times where I was probably a little bit more not as nice as I probably should have been because I just wasn't getting enough sleep, and I was trying to burn the candle at both ends. And when you got to get up at 4:30 to make it into the office in time to do PT at 6, something's got to give, and sleep gives. I still don't do a great job of getting, everybody says you're supposed to get 8 hours of sleep a night, but I try to make sure I get quality sleep. I make sure the room's dark and it's cool and all that. But for me, the sleep, which is important to recover from the hard cycling events, is one of the better ways that I try to take care of myself now as I get a little bit older. See, look, you should be, you're rubbing your eyes right now. You should have got more sleep. You should have got more sleep last night.
I should have. No, I was really tired. I even took a nap in the middle of the day. And
naps are not bad. I'm a big fan. If you don't get the sleep at night, take a 15-minute power nap and get up and tackle it. Especially with a lot of us working from home, you're so much more effective. At least I am. I'm so much more effective in the afternoon if I take a short power nap than if I don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about sleep, I'm pretty sure your body keeps a sleep debt for like 3 weeks. And so it's not like you can get one night of 9 hours and be perfect. It's like really 3 weeks consecutive, 8 to 9 hours to like not be in sleep debt, at least 7, 3 weeks of 7 hours to be functioning well. I prefer 9, but
I very rarely, so you're doing better than me.
I mean, I rarely get 9 too. I just prefer 9. In my ideal life, I'm like in bed by 9:30, waking up at 7, because it's like 30 minutes to fall asleep, 10 to 7. I feel like anything past 10, I'm not really doing anything productive. So I probably don't need that time of like, probably not even spending great quality time with my family at that point,
Right.
And 7, it's like, ideally I'd wake up a little earlier, but then I have to start sacrificing sleep. So there's that. Well, awesome. We already got your action step. It's July 19th. I have the outline for that book. So
right.
Don't need to ask.
Thank you for being my accountability partner.
Of course. It's what I love to do.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. Thank you for doing it.
Of course. And we have our last series of questions.
All right. This is the lightning round.
It's honestly the slowest round. Let's call it the thoughtful round.
Okay. All right.
It's going to take a lot of deep thought. You can always say, I don't know to these questions because I didn't send them beforehand and they are serious questions. So,
all
right. So they do require a bit of pretext. Here we go.
Okay.
A lot of people have come on the podcast and they've said that the catalyst that helps people change from having a fixed mindset, not willing to accept help and not willing to accept change, to having a growth mindset, being willing to accept help and being willing to accept change. The catalyst that has helped people make that switch is a personal choice that happens after either extreme inspiration or extreme desperation. Do you agree, disagree, anything to add or subtract?
I agree, because sometimes you need that external factor to energize you to start making changes. It's one of those things where that can be a great catalyst to energize you and adopt that growth mindset and be, hey, I'm going to keep learning and growing. And it's like the shark, right? You got to keep moving. The shark has to always keep swimming in order to keep the water going over the gills so it doesn't die.
Yep.
And same thing for me, at least. There's those famous lines, you got to get busy living or you got to get busy dying. And I like it. I like being busy living and trying to learn new things and go on cool podcasts like this.
There we go. I love it. And so, given that same amount of extreme inspiration or extreme desperation, why do you think some people make the choice to change and others don't?
I think some people view change as too hard and they're
Mhm.
comfortable with the status quo. And so even though, and part of it, maybe they don't get that extreme inspiration point that pushes them to the idea that the status quo is not okay, or the extreme desperation. And so they sort of muddle through in this middle kind of thing, and um, you know, are comfortable with where they're at, and don't like pushing themselves, and don't like have this fear of failure that holds them back, and keeps them from adopting that idea of changing and growing and getting better.
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting about that is that you can be comfy with your status quo, and your status quo can be really, really bad. Like some people are comfy in toxic relationships. Some people are comfy living below the poverty line. Some people are comfy doing a lot of things that we would, as a society, view as negative. Now, whether that individual views it as negative or positive, that's up to them. If they're happy and content living that way, I say go for it. But if you're complaining about your life and you feel miserable, but you're kind of like comfy or addicted to the negativity and that's all you've known, it can be a hard thing to break, especially because change is a really hard thing. So just something that like I feel like some awareness can shine some light into.
Yeah.
Well, some people need a smaller amount of inspiration or desperation to change, and others need a larger, more consistent amount. What do you think establishes that threshold, that breaking point, and can it be influenced?
It's an interesting question. It, you know, every person, is different and unique. And as I work with the executives, and they put up their goals of things that they want to accomplish through the coaching sessions, um, some of them go right after it, and they're they're very goal oriented, and they're like, hey, I've been successful all my life, and I'm gonna tackle this goal, and I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z. um, Others struggle with that a little bit, and they may be able to do it great for their company, but sometimes their personal goals get pushed on the shelf in the same way that I was pushing my sleep, on the shelf, in the army. Um, so, you know, I think part of it is just our own internal hardwiring, and some folks just get to the point where change is hard, and they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it anymore, and they're just comfortable with where they're at. I do think that can be influenced, in the same way that you me as the accountability partner. There's ways, having that accountability partner that is going to keep you straight. Or, like for me, when I did book number one, I told a bunch of people I was going to write book number one. And sort of, putting it out there, and saying that you're going to do it, is a powerful motivator, at least for me. Some people that wouldn't work, but it did for me, and so I think that can be influenced.
I gotcha. I gotcha. I love it. I love the internal hard wiring. And I think you said something key there. That internal hard wiring, when you think about it, it's influenced our whole lives, right? Like,
Right.
the leader says, I've won my whole life. And so they kind of believe that they're a winner. They believe that they're going to go win. Maybe some people is like, I've won for other people my whole life, but I've never won for myself. That's why they can perform for other companies, can't perform at home. Yeah, success literature, like when you get into like Bob Proctor and um, Napoleon Hill and all that, they really
Mhm.
talk a lot about just your beliefs and thoughts that just are, you know, you think they're just who you are, but not quite. They were like put there at some point in your life. So,
Right. The interesting thing is, if the person, I think there is, and I talk about it in my grip book, that this idea that they've accomplished something difficult in one arena, there is some ability to transfer that accomplishment to something else, because you rely on that and you go, hey, I did this tough thing one time, so I can do this other tough thing, even though it isn't, they aren't even close. But if you haven't ever pushed your boundaries and stretched yourself and accomplished something demanding, it becomes awful hard to do that first sort of really big leap to go do something, really aggressive. And so
Yeah.
I don't know, that definitely, if you've had some small successes doing some things, you can build that as part of your momentum and get yourself to do that big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I I often tell people, because I'm really big on dreams and goals, as you can tell from this podcast. And so
Yeah.
it's not just in this podcast. Like anytime I have a personal conversation with somebody, I want to hear about their dreams and goals and like, hey, why aren't you there? How can we get you there? Basically.
Yeah.
And I'll often tell people to like just go do something big, go do something challenging. And just to build the habit of pushing your barrier. And it can be something so silly. Like it's like, yeah, just go ask that person this thing that is an uncommon question to ask random people. Like just go ask. And then when they give you the answer, you're gonna be like, wow, I did something that I normally wouldn't do. And then you can
Right.
start to translate that to other areas of your life. So I think that is 100% accurate. And I think it's because um, our actions, our experiences give us feedback. Like James Clear, funny, I'm about to mention James Clear in the next question, talks about how our behavior, like the goal isn't to um like do things, it is to become a person who does things.
Mhm.
And so he's talks about how our actions give us feedback about who we are. And I think when you push the limits in one area of your life, that gives you feedback that you are a person who can push the limits, which is why you can translate it. Is why I think that can be kind of transferred, because like
Okay.
a gritty person is going to be a gritty person, and
Right.
some of the discipline you had in the military, you probably brought to your small business because you start to see yourself as a disciplined person, which
Right.
I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Our next question, I want you to keep in mind the avatar of this person who has a really fixed mindset, not willing to accept help, not willing to accept change.
Okay.
So in Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about the 4 laws of changing your behavior. And
Mhm.
the laws are: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. With that context in mind and the avatar we just talked about, how can we create an environment for that person who has a really fixed mindset, not willing to accept help, they're not willing to accept change? How can we create an environment that makes it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying for them to make the choice that will change their life?
Right. So, when you dig into Clear, and I like Clear. I actually like Charles Duhigg's book on habits as well. It's called The Power of Habits. It came out a couple of years ago, but I know Clear is the popular guy on habits. And the make it obvious is the cue. That and for this person with the fixed mindset, whatever it is that we're trying to change with that person, the cue is what triggers that person doing something. And so you've got to make that obvious. Then you make the action as easy as possible to do. And then the reward, you got to make it, I can't remember, I think it's meaningful, is the reward side
Mhm.
of it. And so those 3 pieces you're all playing with as you're trying to create this person's habit. And it's small steps. That person isn't going to change overnight. And so whatever it is, and let's say this person, the easy example is physical fitness. Let's say this person has never done physical fitness, and so for the cue, you make it obvious. So you make that person, tell them, hey, look, every night you're going to set out your running shoes, your shorts, and your t-shirt. And so when you wake up, the first thing that you see in the morning is that stuff. I still do it for myself. If I don't lay my stuff out to ride the bike in the morning, it is so much harder to get on the bike than if it's sitting there on my chair next to my bed when I get up.
Yeah.
And then you want to make it easy. So for me, at least, I get the bike down. For this person, like who's never worked out, we just want him to walk around the block. And so you make it easy and say, hey, look, all you have to do is just walk around the block. And then the reward, make it, enjoyable or meaningful, whatever he wants to do to reward himself for walking around the block. You say, okay, that it's your reward. For me, it's the endorphins and the satisfaction of actually working out, that is my reward. But that's how you work on a person to figure out whatever the change is. And the change may be something big, like, hey, they need to get organized. So you start out with something easy, like, let's make a daily list each night. So before you go to bed, you have to make a list. And so you're going to have this notebook by your bed where you write the list. And so in the next morning, when you wake up, you've got this list and you actually accomplish some of the things on the list. And at the end of the day, you see all the stuff that you've accomplished. And
Yep.
so hopefully that changes that person and makes them a slight bit more organized than they were before. But it's small things, and it's chipping at it, just little pieces, because you're not going to turn a person, a 180 overnight. But if you can think about those small wins and small ideas like that, Clear talks about the compounding power of habit. You can build a whole bunch of habits on top of each other that are really driving you in a different direction than you were maybe right now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. Thanks for breaking it down so well. I need to go reread the book because yeah, you said some stuff that I was like, man, he did say that. So I do need to go reread the book, clearly. Well, obviously.
It's actually so there were 6 executives this last 6 months that the company asked if we could go over Atomic Habits. And so they all had to read it. And so as one of the coaching sessions, we did our book talk on Atomic Habits. So I had to reread it too, because I'd read it a couple of years ago when it first came out.
Yeah. No, I got you. Well, awesome. Is there anything else that you want to chat about before we sign off?
No, just I really appreciate the opportunity to come on, and thanks for energizing me to get some sticky notes out. And you'll get a picture from me on Monday, July 19th.
Love it. There we go.
And if folks want to find me, I'm at the fivecoatconsultinggroup.com. I blog weekly on leadership and grit. And right now I've been blogging on the war in Ukraine because it has been compelling as a former Army officer. So there's some good articles on that to help folks understand the war in Ukraine. But they can come find me that way, and love to talk about grit or leadership or whatever they want to talk about.
There we go. Well, if you guys loved what David had to say, you loved his vibe, make sure to go check out the website. All the ways to contact him will be down in the show notes. As we always ask, go ahead and shoot this podcast to 1 to 3 people need to hear this message. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes, and we're out.